Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading from The Kidnapping by Linda Burson, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me for chapter 1. Her Manolo shoes made that click-clacking sound as Jenna Watson ambled along her mosaic marble floor toward her wide staircase that led to her second floor. The house was devoid of people, which made the noise of her heels even louder than usual. Since Thanksgiving was in 2 days, Jenna told her house staff to take off Tuesday afternoon and not return until the following Monday morning. She had every intention of spending the holiday with her fiance of 1 month, Stephen Mosley. She had a whole 5 days of plans laid out in her mind, and she was more excited than she had been in years. Hell, ever. Holidays for Jenna wasn't something she relished usually, but she dreaded any and all since her father passed away 5 years ago. At least when Al Latson was alive, Jenna would celebrate with him. And sometimes he'd invite his partners from his law firm over to join them. It wasn't like a large, happy family as it was when Jenna's mom was alive, but it was better than having no one. The extra company joining them from the law firm hadn't happened since her dad died. And now her best laid plans of making holidays tolerable, maybe even enjoyable, wouldn't be happening in her present or her future. Her original plan of having a wonderful Thanksgiving in the ensuing 3 days with Stephen wouldn't be happening after all. Jenna heard some upsetting news regarding her fiance that unfortunately she couldn't ignore. She canceled her plans without delay. She would be spending this Thanksgiving holiday alone again. Shock was an understatement when one of Jenna's business acquaintances from her father's law office is mentioned seeing Jenna's fiance, Stephen Mosley, out to dinner with another woman. At first, Jenna assumed Stephen was entertaining a business associate. After all, he was in banking and finance. It wasn't unusual to take clients out to dine. She had gone out to dinner with Stephen as well after their initial accidental meeting at an elaborate cocktail party hosted by her accountant. However, when the acquaintance mentioned the establishment, the time they were there, and specifically that Stephen was sitting in the corner booth on the same side as this woman with his hand on top of hers, Jenna knew her fiance was not doing business, at least not money business, but more likely monkey business. Maybe if it was this gossiped indiscretion alone, Jenna might have believed a rational explanation that Stephen tried to give her. However, when she thought back to a few conversations she had had with Stephen, her instincts took over. Her father made her paranoid about people wanting to befriend her for money, and she experienced this enough on her own. Too many times to count, men she dated asked her to help her out with the cab fare, throw $5 towards something they were buying, or even toss a 20 for a tip after dinner. There were countless memories of someone that was supposedly a good friend asking to borrow cash, only to realize they had no intention of ever paying her back. When Stephen kept asking her when she was adding him to all her bank accounts, that tiny voice in her head kept nudging her. It was just like all the other times when the other men, and unfortunately women as well. This was why Jenna spent most of her time alone. Now the one person she thought she could trust hugely disappointed her. She had to end her relationship with Stephen. He swore on his mother's grave that he truly loved her, but it was difficult for Jenna to believe him. It didn't take long for Jenna to decide to break off the engagement and end their relationship. She'd been through too many lying, cheating, one-track-minded men in her 35 years. In her mind, once a liar and cheater, always one. Her trust in people in general, let alone men, was minimal at best, and trust was most important to her. No, she had no intention of reconsidering anything when it came to Stephen. It wasn't until she confronted him and he insisted that the woman he was with was just an old friend who was in town for a visit that she hesitated a second. He begged her to forgive him for not being forthcoming about his friend, but he knew she may get the wrong idea. Unfortunately, Jenna decided she couldn't cave. The engagement remained ended, and even though he swore he was in love with her, she was still in love with him. There was something about his manner that attracted her. He had a sweet innocence about him, and he was so charming and sophisticated at the same time. She'd never met someone like him before. However, she refused to allow anyone to take advantage of her anymore. She even recalled the secretary at her attorney's office making a comment about how she overheard Stephen bragging to another client about how rich his fiance was. This alone didn't give her pause, but with this new news of his private dinner, her instincts went on high alert. Jenna felt if he genuinely loved her and not her money, somehow he would prove it to her someday. For now, she needed to return to being alone. She loved the money and the lifestyle it afforded her, but she hated how she never knew if someone loved her or for her money. She thought Stephen was the one. It was a massive blow to her heart. As Jenna ambled around her three-story mansion in Greenwich, she felt more lost than she had in years. Turning off all the lights, she set her alarm and headed straight to her master bedroom. It was always the best laid plans that never seemed to come to fruition. Chapter 2. Jenna walked into her usual haunt of late, the cellar bar, on a frigid Wednesday evening in February. After a miserable Thanksgiving followed by an even more miserable Christmas, she decided she couldn't spend any more time alone. Stephen had tried to call her a few times, but she always told him she didn't know if she would ever trust him or believe him. Fearful she may one day give in because of her loneliness, she knew she needed to get out of the house. Even thinking about his sexy smile would get her salivating. She needed a distraction. She certainly couldn't frequent the places she used to with Stephen or her professional acquaintances, so she had to find a place far enough away from her neighborhood, a place where no one would know her or anything about her lifestyle or family fortune. Jenna enjoyed sitting at a bar, having a drink, and listening to music like a lot of people. It was something to do, so she didn't feel so isolated all the time. It didn't mean she was looking for another boyfriend. Actually, it was the exact opposite. She was looking for alone time, but not complete seclusion. Jenna never made friends easily. Since she had issues believing anyone wanted her company just because of her and not what she could do for them, she never cultivated any long-standing close friendships. When her father was alive, she was always busy attending cocktail parties and dinners with him and running multiple charity events. She was so active that she never felt the need for a close friendship with anyone. Without her father having a wife, Jenna was his standard date for all his business functions. After he passed, she couldn't garner the strength to continue attending any social events without her father's secure arm by her side. Besides, the people at those functions were his associates. She knew them through her father only, not on her own. The cellar bar in Bridgeport was just the place that Jenna could enjoy her own time, but not feel completely alone. Since New Year's Eve, Jenna had been a regular customer. She'd take a seat on the far end of the bar, furthest from the entrance. She toned down the way she generally dressed after her first visit on New Year's Eve. She had worn a beautiful light blue silk dress, her diamond stud earrings and a diamond bracelet, and her long dark hair was held back with a lovely diamond clip on one side. Her coat that draped over the back of her chair was her long faux trim cape detailed wool blend Burberry. It wasn't until she arrived at the restaurant that she realized she was overdressed for the establishment and the type of clientele present. Though, being that it was New Year's Eve, at least she wasn't too disastrously out of place. Since her typical attire would attract too much attention, Jenna felt a nice pair of jeans with a sweater worked best. Maybe if it was a warm summer evening, she could get away with a sundress. That bar may not be like the elegant places she was used to visiting, but at least she knew no one would bother her there. She ordered her usual dirty martini and hummed along to a Rolling Stone song playing in the background. 2 sips into her second drink, Jenna overheard Butch, the young 20-something bartender, greet a man who had just entered and walked over to the corner of the bar at the complete opposite end of her. She had never seen him before. Most evenings she could recognize the regular customers, at least on a weekday. This was a Wednesday evening, one of her steady days. That was another nice thing about the bar. The regulars all came there for the same reasons, to have a few quiet drinks and not be disturbed. They all waved or greeted each other with a hello, but mostly stayed to themselves. Since Jenna had been a regular since New Year's, she knew all the other regulars and didn't recognize this guy. "Evening, Andy," Butch greeted the new face. "Glad to see you this cold, bitter night." Glad to see this cold, bitter night didn't keep you away. The usual? Hey, Butch. Yeah, the late February winds can whip through a person's body as if it's sliced open. Usual is fine. Jenna thought it was an odd way to describe how cold it was, considering the establishment's location, a rundown neighborhood with multiple empty storefronts. She thought the guy might have been a hitman of some sort. Who else would use those words? Maybe a butcher? She knew no one that came there would be someone with distinction. Then she remembered that she was a frequent guest at the bar. Absolutely, Andy. Give me a few minutes. I have something to take care of first. No problem, Butch. I'm not in a hurry. As he slipped off his black leather gloves and shoved them into his pockets, Jenna couldn't take her eyes off the stranger named Andy. She didn't know what it was, but there was something about him that made her stare. He wasn't a professional-looking man by any means, but Jenna thought he had a way about him. Maybe it was the way he walked or how he stood erect. It made him look really tall. She wasn't sure from her distance, but she thought he had to at least be 6 feet. She tried to picture him in a suit. With his heavy beard, though, she couldn't see it. Butch slid a drink in front of Andy, said a few words, then slapped his hand on the bar before he walked away. Jenna observed this man pick up his glass with the amber-colored liquid and toss his head back to gulp it in one go. As he placed the glass back on the bar top, he glanced in front of him to call for Butch, who was on his way over to Jenna. Looks like that man at the end of the bar over there is staring at you, Butch, Jenna said. Butch turned around and saw whom she was talking about. Oh, Andy? Yeah, looks like he needs a refill sooner than I expected. Let me get your drink, Miss Ladson. Then I'll get over there. Seems he's a regular as well, but I haven't seen him in here before, Miss Ladson commented. Andy? Yeah, he's more of a regular than you are, ma'am. Oh, so he's more of a drunk than me, she said with a smirk. Butch snorted. Andy? No, ma'am, not really. I'm surprised he drank that so fast. He usually drinks a lot slower than that, but maybe he's had a bad day. Is that so? Yes, ma'am. I think he likes to wind down after a long day at work. Well, we all have bad days, don't we? Why is it I've never seen him in here before, Butch? That's because he's usually much earlier. He's late tonight. Hearing this information lifted her spirits a bit. If he's a regular, she might have an opportunity to see him again sometime. She was not sure why, but she found this Andy person appealing. There was something about his demeanor and the way he spoke that she noticed was different from anyone else who frequented the bar. Butch walked back to Andy with another bourbon and water. Unfortunately, after that, Jenna's view was intersected by many people who surrounded the bar top. The next time Jenna could spy the other end of the bar where Andy had sat, he was gone. She felt a stab of disappointment. Not that she was specifically looking for a man, but Andy was the first man she observed since her breakup that she took note of in a positive way. She wasn't used to men dressed this casually, even in bars, and she found it sexy. Stephen usually wore a suit and tie. Even if they went out for a drink, he wore an expensive button-down shirt and tailored pants. Besides that, it had been months since she ended her engagement. She was due to at least try to meet someone else. She supposed if she was really curious enough, she could always ask Butch more about him. 30 minutes later, a large group departed, and Jenna noticed Andy sitting in the middle of the bar. She was so surprised by this revelation that her body shivered. She was pleased that he was still there. Sometime later, after the group hovering around Jenna's end of the bar moved to a table for dinner, she turned her head to the left and saw Andy sitting on her corner of the bar, 4 seats over. Butch approached him, carrying a bourbon and water, and placed it on the bar. Another Andy, how's it going tonight? She observed Andy nod toward Butch. Andy continued talking. I was worried you might be really sick. You're in here late tonight. Thanks, Butch. I'm doing well. I worked late tonight. Then I needed to go home first. Jenna again caught herself staring at Andy. Their eyes met. She found her stomach fluttering. She knew she found him attractive, but it was his penetrating eyes boring into hers that intensified the feelings. They stared at each other until finally she turned her eyes away. The nervousness she felt made her foot tap nonstop against the bar stool. When she looked back toward Andy, he was still staring. Is there a reason you're staring at me? She asked softly. I apologize, ma'am. I shouldn't be staring. Please excuse my intrusion. It's just rare to see someone of your your elegance, not only sitting so near me, but in this bar to begin with. Jenna was surprised by this man's verbal skills. He was certainly not dressed like the men in her circles, especially Stephen. His attire consisted of worn-out, faded old jeans, a flannel shirt, and much longer hair than the white-collar professional man. But he was articulate and had a lovely voice. Under all that hair, ragged beard, and unkempt clothes was a quite nice-looking man. Instead of addressing him, she only nodded once, gave a small smirk, and then turned away. She contemplated his words a moment. "What's wrong with this bar?" she asked Andy indignantly. It seemed Andy was taken aback by her speaking to him and her tone. She realized she came across being offended. "Oh, there's nothing wrong with this bar. I love this bar. I come here often. I don't mean any disrespect, ma'am, but it isn't the kind of place most women who are what?" she questioned, jumping to conclusions. She was on the defense, wondering what this stranger may think of her. "Who are as lovely as you?" Her mouth dropped open. She stuttered for a few seconds. Thank you. That is kind of you."